All right, we are very excited to bring in the Bears' new punter, Tory Taylor, from Iowa, but also from Australia. Tory, thanks so much for jumping on with us today. We are very excited. We actually have listeners and viewers from Australia, so I know that part of our viewership, which I'm not saying is super huge, but they do exist, and I know they're very excited to have you on. So thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. What is it, about 7:30 in the morning there? So no, it's very exciting. Thanks very much for having me.
You signed your new deal, got the paper, right? And then you sent a message to your parents and they were sleeping. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I signed it at 8 a.m. So it would have been 11 p.m. Saturday night. And yeah, my parents go to sleep my dad goes to sleep probably like 7 o'clock and my mum probably 9. So yeah, they were well and truly asleep for sure.
So I want to start with, just going from Australian rules football and this transition you make to American football. You're coming, across the world. Obviously there were some hiccups with COVID too that we could get into at some point, but let's stick to the football side of it first, more so than, we get into your journey. Just how different is it? How much of a pipeline is this that's sort of developed here, especially with punters? Just how does that all go down when you make the decision in your life? Like, all right, I want to make this transition to American football with the goal of making it to the NFL.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, when I set out and started punting, which was 5 years ago exactly, almost, it was July 2019, I never had any idea that it would certainly take me to the NFL. And that was, it was obviously a dream. When you play any sport, you want to try and make it to the highest level. Everyone's competitive in that aspect. But yeah, I joined ProKick Australia in the middle of 2019, and I kind of knew that Johnny Smith and Nathan Chapman, who run ProKick down in Melbourne, Australia, they've had a pretty good, track record of sending guys over and doing pretty well in college. And I think by the time I joined, they'd saved just over $150 million in scholarship money. And I think that's towards the $200 million mark now, which is really, really impressive. And they've sent guys, whether it be FBS, FCS, Div 2, a whole range of schools. And I kind of looked into it a little bit and I thought, well, I'm really not enjoying what I'm doing now. So I kind of thought, well, I think I'm pretty good at kicking the ball. And then I thought, I don't really have anything to lose. And my dad said, don't be one of those guys, that's sitting on the couch or in the pub in 20 or 25 years' time saying, oh, would have, should have, could have. He's like, yeah, either do it or you don't. It's pretty plain and simple. And I thought, well, yeah, like I just said, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. So I'll just give it a crack and see where life takes me. And here I am on the biggest podcast in the world. And
that's right.
Exactly right, baby.
You're right, Tory.
Yeah,
you said on Saturday, Tory, that when you do get opportunities to punt, it gives you an opportunity to control the game. You have that opportunity. Where does that mentality come from, though, where you feel like, hey, this is my chance to really dictate what can happen on this very specific play?
Yeah, I think life's just easier when you're in control. You know what I mean? People always say, like, just worry about what you can control. And at that specific period of time of the game, I can control things how I want to control. And at the end of the day, I just love winning. So I just really want to put the team in the best position. And I think at the end of the day, when you're in control, life's just a whole lot easier. So I may as well control things how I want to control them. And I'm fortunate enough to be one of very few positions on the field that gets to do that. But like Caleb said a couple of weeks ago, hopefully won't be punting too much. So might not get to see a whole lot of that, which is certainly a good thing.
Well, and so going off of that, Tory, I got to come clean here. When the Bears picked you, and it was absolutely nothing to do with you, I called you punt god. I love the University of Iowa. I love Australia. You sound like the greatest. I hope you have the best career of all time. But I'm like, a punter in the 4th round? This is, come on, man. The Bears have other needs. And so now you're going to become my favorite player on the team because that's just that's the way this is going to go. But were you surprised that the Bears, did you have any inkling that they were going to pick you that high?
Not necessarily. I mean, I'd heard from a lot of teams kind of at the Senior Bowl and the Combine, but a lot of teams keep their cards pretty close to their chest. And I know there's probably a few people out there. Obviously, you were one of them, Mark, that was a little bit surprised. But I will say, if I was on another team, I'd be certain to make sure that I make the other teams pay. And obviously, going pretty early in the draft is pretty special. But it's worked out perfectly coming to the Bears. You know, it's 3 hours down the highway from Iowa City. It's a great city, and you know everyone's kind of been talking about the Bears probably the last couple of months because everyone kind of knew Caleb was coming here. So I feel like, I mean, I might be a bit biased, and at the end of the day, I don't know any different because I've only ever been a Chicago Bear in the NFL. But it seems like it's a pretty exciting time to be part of this organization, which I'm excited for.
So it was interesting hearing you talk on Saturday too about just the difference in the football, and obviously in Australia the football is bigger. You talked about how it's like easier to kick because it's bigger. It's a bigger sweet spot. How much of an adjustment was that for you? Just coming over. First of all, the adjustment from coming from Australia to Iowa has to be a big adjustment just to begin with. Let's start with that. But then when it comes to kicking the ball, just how long did it take you to kind of get used to it? And then when did you realize, like, I can spin this thing? I mean, I saw your kicks the other day on Saturday. Like that thing's flying through the air, spiral when you need to go deep. And then obviously you have all these highlights from college too, where it's looking like a lob wedge that's just spinning on the green.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Some people think that it's been easy my whole life, and it's one thing that I just kind of picked up and went with. But the first few months at Pro Kick, I was shanking them all over the place just because you're really just trying to change the whole, I guess. I mean, I could get into it in a really nerdy way, but you guys, there's not that many.
No, let's do it. Look, I coached special teams in high school, so I'm ready for this. Let's hear it. I want to go.
I guess with the Aussie rules ball, you kind of hold it more so in the middle of your body. Whereas, that was something I'd done for 20 years. So to be able to like change that in such a short period of time, it obviously took quite a while, and you change like the whole mechanics and everything like that goes into kicking. So that was certainly an adjustment, but I was fortunate enough to be working with, the best punting coach in the world in Nathan Chapman. So that certainly helped. And I owe a lot of credit to him. Even just the gains when I finished my college career, and I think it was the 1st of January, the gains I made from then up until the Combine were probably the biggest gains that I've made throughout my whole career. Just being able to have him come out for what was about 9-10 days in California, something just really, really clicked. And I remember saying, like, man, I wish you told me this like 4 years ago. Those shanks may not have happened. So I really feel like the last few months I really gained a lot of ground in terms of punting. But I think the best thing is it's like golf. You're never perfect. Like you never ever hit the perfect shot. So yeah, the ceiling is certainly really high, and there's still a lot more development in my game, which I'm excited for. And it's one thing that I'm never ever going to be perfect at, which is great. That's exactly what I want.
Do you play a lot of golf? I noticed you got the Masters gear on. Do you play a lot of golf too?
Yeah, I'm okay. I mean, if I was to have a handicap, it's probably around the 14 to 16 mark. So I'm not too bad. I can bomb the driver and I putt okay, but around the greens, I'm not too good. So I might need a little short game lesson, but I kind of keep the wedge shots throughout on the football field, if that makes sense.
Just hit the ball big. You don't need to just pick up by the green, get back in the car, have a beer, move it along. That's my golf.
Yeah, exactly.
Good point. Tory, for maybe some of those Bears fans that were skeptical of the pick initially, if you had to tell them to go and watch one of your games from Iowa to show exactly how you can control a game, which one would you go tell them to watch?
Probably the Wisconsin game. I don't want to sound like cocky or arrogant or anything like that, but there's probably quite a few that you could go back. There's probably the Wisconsin game this past season, Penn State 2021, Iowa State 2021, South Dakota 2022. Yeah, there's certainly been quite a few, and not that it's a good thing, but from a personal standpoint, I was fortunate enough to punt quite a lot of Iowa, so that certainly helped my case as well.
What was it
Also-
about that Wisconsin game? Because we've heard that Wisconsin game get brought up, and the guy
Well,
right
mostly
above
by
me
me,
is- it was-
mostly by me
yeah.
because I'm a Badger, Tory, and
Mhm.
I watching that game. I mean, you don't sound arrogant at all. Like you pretty much controlled that football game. Like I'm not even kidding. For a punter to control a football game, just the way that game was going, and there wasn't a lot of points, obviously. Like you made a huge difference in that football game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things I've always kind of gone into games is if we're struggling, I've always just thought, well, like if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I've always kind of just gone into that. I've always had that mindset when I go out to punt, and I just love punting, you know what I mean? And always loved away games because I feel like punting is probably one of those positions where people don't really pay much attention to, but I feel like that day they probably did. So, yeah, it was kind of good to send a few Wisconsin fans away with a few sad faces, and it was pretty quiet early on, so that was good fun.
Thank you.
That was me.
Absolutely. I'm not sorry at all.
I love it.
You shouldn't be. Hey, I also, when it comes to adjustments, I mean, first of all, my guess is one of the things that NFL teams felt very confident about is like, look, if this guy came from a totally different style of football, came over to Iowa, you mentioned some of the adjustments you had to make, and you're still getting better. I don't imagine the adjustment from college to the NFL is going to be terribly hard for you. But that being said, I mean, there are a lot of differences. Obviously, just size, speed, the rush coming at you, things like that. But also Iowa, like you guys ran sort of a unique punt scheme where you got three guys in the backfield, sort of offset. You can move it left and right. In the NFL, it's pretty much just like pro style punting for the most part. Does that make any difference to you at all as you're making this adjustment? Or is for you, it's just still about the snap and the kick?
Yeah, it's all about, for me, it's all about having short steps, clean hands, and making maximum contact with the ball. And that's something that I've always focused on. And you can put people wherever they want, but at the end of the day, I'm not in control of those people, and that's going to be up to the coaches to determine where certain people should go. But my job is really just to catch it cleanly, put it where I want it to be, and make maximum contact with the ball. And when you do those things, usually things take care of themselves.
Not to be braggadocious, Tory, but what can you do with the football that most punters don't do?
It's probably, I mean, it's hard to compare to guys in the NFL because they've played games and they're so experienced, and it's the best of the best doing what they do. But I think probably what separated me from other guys, especially in this class, was more so just my ability to probably do it in games. And I think that's what a lot of coaches paid attention to, because I like to use a few golf analogies, but everyone's really good on the driving range, myself included, and then you get out on the golf course and it's a completely different game. And I think one thing that separates me from the other guys is just being able to do it in games. And some people are like, oh, the Bears have got 4 preseason games, but I love that because I just love playing in games. You know what I mean? Because that's where I guess winning and losing counts. You don't really win or lose games. Well, in my opinion, games aren't won on the practice field, but they can certainly be lost. But yeah, like I said, I love playing in games, and I feel like that's when the stakes are at the highest. I kind of just love that pressure, if that makes sense.
How did rookie minicamp go for you?
Yeah, it was great. I punted on Friday and Saturday, and yeah, I loved it. It was just, obviously you meet guys and everyone's kind of in the same position. No one's been here before. So yeah, it was just a really enjoyable experience. To be completely honest, I'm loving being a Chicago Bear in simple terms. It's really worked out perfectly. And I was a little nervous before my punt period on Friday. It was the first time I was going to be punting, I guess, in an NFL practice. And, Coach Hightowers comes up to me. He's like, man, you're an effing Chicago Bear. Like, let's go. And I was kind of like, yeah, you know what? You're right. Like, let's go. I'm really lucky to be here. And, yeah, I'm just grateful for, I guess, all the decisions that went into getting me here.
Tory, I could just see the relationship between you and Hightower. Like it's blossomed. It's so expressive in how he was talking about you, how you were talking about him in his press conferences. But with Coach Hightower, with the confidence he has in you, how does that make your job? How do you envision it'll make your job a little easier, knowing that you have a coach that just has all the confidence?
I think I said this the other day in my press conference, but NFL coaches kind of like to manipulate people and really, this is the way. And if you're not going to do it, then I'll get someone else that can do it. Whereas Coach Hightower, he's just like, well, what's your best ball? Like, I want you to be you. We drafted you for a reason. So we want to get the best out of you. And I think when coaches really believe in someone and just let them be them and just let them be their authentic self, I really feel like there's quite the correlation between that and maximal performance on the field. And, he's probably said it to me a dozen times since I got here. He's just like, be you. And I think that's one thing that Coach Woods at Iowa always told me too, is just be yourself, go out there and have fun and do what you do best. And I think that's really when I perform at my best.
Yeah, Tory, we had him on the show last week for an extended conversation. And, I think another thing I've come to appreciate about Coach Hightower is he's not rigid in his ways, kind of speaking to the same thing you're just talking about, find your best ball, kick that. But even when it comes to this new kickoff rule that's been put in this year in the NFL, Coach Hightower was heavily involved in all that. And, it's interesting. I know I asked you about this on Saturday in the press conference, but just hearing him being open-minded to the idea of you maybe being involved in that, because the kickoff's going to be so different now that ball placement and where you put it is just going to be more important than ever compared to just, distance and hang time. How much experience do you have kicking off the tee? Because we didn't really talk about that too much. And how quickly do you think you can figure that out if you haven't done it a ton?
To answer your question, I have absolutely zero experience in a game. I've tried it a handful of times at practice, and I'm not too bad. I mean, I'm not hitting like 4 or 5 kickoffs like the pros do. But now this rule is probably going to help me a lot. So whether it'll be off the tee or a couple of drop kicks just to screw a few teams over will be certainly fun. But probably like I said the other day, whatever the coaches want me to do, and they think it's in the best interest of helping the team, then I'm all for it.
All right, so I'm going to give my ignorance here. If you drop kick it, does that mean it's going to go further than a standard punt?
No, because it's harder to make, hit the sweet spot of the ball.
Okay.
And you're kicking it at a lower point, so it's not going to go as high.
So it's more of a directional play, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And from a legality standpoint as well, the ball has to touch the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never really been in love with the drop kick too much, but because of all the variables involved in it. But it is interesting. I did want to go back to just your. I want to make sure the fans all can appreciate your experience of coming over, because I know it. Not only do you make that jump to Iowa, but it happened to be during COVID, right? And how you had to quarantine, I think, on both ends of the trip. You got in late because of it. And then meanwhile, I know just from reading a couple stories, it was really hard for your parents to come over too, right? To come see you. Like that took a year or two.
Yeah. So it was late July or early August 2020. I remember my coach rang me and said, "Oh, hey, you can go to Sydney this weekend and we're going to try and get your visa." And I said, "Well, try, or have you got the visa?" He's like, "Well, no, all we can do is try." And I said, "Well, I don't want to really risk sitting in a hotel for 2 weeks with no guarantee that I'm going to get a visa." But then I thought, after a few conversations with my parents, I thought, well, I'm just sitting around doing nothing during COVID anyway, because it was really tough restrictions in Melbourne where I'm from. So I thought, well, I'll go try it. And then I remember I got on the plane from Melbourne to Sydney, got to Sydney airport, and they said, "Oh, what are you here for?" And I said, "Oh, I'm trying to get a visa." And they're like, "Well, that's not a valid reason. You're going to be on the next flight back to Melbourne." So I'm sitting at the airport thinking, "Oh, I'm going back to Melbourne." And obviously my parents were happy because, especially my mum, I'm coming back home. But then a couple of hours later, the lady came back and she's like, "All right, yeah, you guys are all good. Get on the bus and we'll take you to the hotel." And we were in a room for 2 weeks, and you could not leave the room. And if you did, your 2 weeks would start again. So you obviously didn't want to leave the room. So, yeah, and that was, I remember a few days in, this Big Ten season was cancelled. So I thought, oh, great. Now I'm really here for nothing. Like I'm not going there for school, I'm going across the other side of the world to play football. I could have just done school here. So that was a little frustrating. And then I was about a week in John, one of my coaches back home, I don't know how he did it, but he managed to get us all visa appointments the following week. So once we got out of the hotel on a Monday, we had our visa appointments on the Tuesday. We got our visas, and yeah, we all flew out on the Saturday morning. So it was a pretty crazy experience. It was all 7 of us, obviously all in separate rooms throughout the hotel. I think I was lucky that one of my best friends, Charlton, he was in the room next to me, so we could talk to one another on the balcony. So it was pretty crazy. It was really just the little things, like just sitting and having, I reckon we had 4 or 5 coffees a day because there wasn't much else to do. We'd just sit on the balcony and talk to one another and solve the world's problems.
I mean, what were you watching? Was it you had to go Jordan documentary, right? You were all into The Last Dance? Please say yes.
No, I'm actually not really a basketball fan, funnily enough. Yeah. So I don't know what I think I was watching Yellowstone, and then I was watching a lot of golf, just YouTube. Yeah, really just trying to just calling a lot of people. I mean, my FaceTime log would have been absolutely crazy, and yeah, it's a pretty whirlwind experience. But I feel like it really helped me, to be honest, just prepare for what was coming. And I thought, well, if I can get through 2 weeks of sitting in a hotel by myself, I can do anything. Did
you know, sorry, I'm just curious here. Did you know that you were not going to be NIL eligible because you were coming from Australia?
Yeah, I always knew that. I didn't, but
yeah.
People, I mean, it's obviously different in the NFL, but I saw it firsthand with a few players at Iowa. Guys just worrying about money too much and their performance starts to decline. Whereas at the end of the day, financial gain is a byproduct of performance on the field. And at the end of the day, it's what happens on the field that counts. Everything else is just, yeah, like I said, a byproduct. But I never really worried about money or anything like that in college.
When I saw that you couldn't make the money, but how could I give back? And you did, I believe, Count the Kicks, which it was started by, I guess, 5 moms who lost stillborn babies, and you're giving back that way. And really, I mean, outside of, I'm sure, made you feel great, but endeared you to a ton of people in Iowa City and around the state, the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you bring that up because I've probably said it a few times in previous interviews and things like that. But when I first set out to do that, I honestly thought, if we send $300 or $400 off to charity, then that's absolutely great. And I think we're up towards the $60,000, $70,000 mark, which is just absolutely crazy. And at the end of the day, I've just gone out there and punted the football, but people just donating and buying T-shirts and pledging money to one of the other charities we've got has, helped save babies, which is pretty special.
Tory, one last question for you. I actually ran into a big Iowa Hawkeyes fan when I was at the gym, and I told him, hey, we're talking to Tory Taylor. You got anything for him that you want me to ask? And he said, how do you anticipate you will handle not maybe hearing the MVP chants when you go out and punt like you did when you were in Iowa City?
No, that's absolutely fine with me. And, Nate Kading's a good friend of mine, and he kicked a while for the league. And I think one of the best words of advice he's given me is just, if you're boring and no one knows about you, that means you're doing a good job. So that's one thing that I'm just going to stick by, because when you're not performing, everyone will come after you. And I'm just going to do my job, be boring, and go about life as a Chicago Bear.
Well, Tory, this is a city that loves special teams, so I have a feeling they're still going to love you regardless. And maybe Caleb's right. Maybe there won't be as many punts, but I think everybody will be cool with that if that's the case. I think Carm's a little crushed. You're not like a big Luke Longley fan or something like that, but maybe he just didn't.
It's okay.
He didn't have that big Bulls impression in Australia, but we'll let you go, man. Thank you so much.
MJ is the GOAT. There's no doubt about that. And anyone that says anything differently, then I think they need to really reconsider where they stand in life in general.
I love you.
Yes.
I'm serious. I mean, 6 is more than 4.
Yes, and everything else too, damn it.
You need to talk to some of your teammates then.
I was going to say, you need to go have that conversation with Jalen Johnson immediately.
Yes, okay. I'll have to. I'm sure that'll be brought up at some stage, but at the end of the day, I'm not really a basketball fan, so my opinion's pretty invalid.
You're an expert. That was brilliant.
It's valid if you're on the MJ side of things, that's for sure. Yeah. Tory, thanks so much, man. We're excited to have you.
Guys. Thank you.
We'll let you go. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thank you.